Hello, and thank you for joining us on this webinar today. It's specifically focused for advisors or international biotechnology companies looking to undertake research and development activities here in Australia. In this first installment of a series of webinars, we'll focus on why Australia. We'll discuss the myriad of benefits available to biotechnology companies that undertake their R&D activities here. In future webinars, we'll discuss in more detail the process for setting up to undertake R&D in Australia, structuring considerations, and home in on some of the specific tips and tricks to help ensure that the process runs as smoothly as possible. We'll start off with some introductions. So I'm Rita Choueiri. I'm a director at William Buck. I'm a chemist by background, and I head up the R&D incentives and grants team in Melbourne. And I'm joined today by my esteemed colleague, Jack.qi, who is our director in the tax services team at William Buck's Sydney office.
Hi everyone, nice to be here today.
And together we'll be sharing our experiences with assisting overseas biotech companies undertake R&D in Australia. You can find our detailed profiles in the links to this webinar or find us on LinkedIn. Okay, so Jack, is there anything else you'd like to add before we kick off?
Yes, Rita. So for inbound businesses who are not yet familiar with William Buck, we're an accounting firm with offices throughout Australia and New Zealand. We have a strong industry focus, and as you can probably guess, Rita and I are big on technology and biotech. We see ourselves as a landing pad for businesses coming to Australia, which means that we assist inbound biotech companies with a full suite of accounting, financial advisory, tax advisory, tax compliance, and government grant advisory services.
So what's the number one reason that you see biotech companies flock to Australia to undertake their R&D activities?
A key benefit of coming to Australia to conduct R&D in clinical trials is the generous R&D tax incentive administered by the Australian government, which can provide a refundable tax incentive of up to 43.5% of eligible R&D expenditure for companies with an aggregated turnover, think of this as a group turnover, below 20 million Australian dollars. The incentive can then be put back into funding further clinical trials and research in Australia, resulting in a cycle which can significantly increase the scope and trials in a way not otherwise possible without the incentive. Also, depending on which country the parent company is located, there may be favorable exchange rates and cost of labor. Now, Rita, you're a scientist. Maybe you can talk about the scientific benefits of choosing Australia.
Yeah, definitely. So following on from what you've just mentioned about the R&D tax incentive, generally the types of activities that can qualify may include, drug or medical device development, including in vitro and in vivo toxicology studies, analytical studies, preclinical and clinical studies, biodistribution studies such as pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic studies, the manufacture of the drug or the device used in the clinical trials, and sort of project management and any regulatory and ethics-based activities also required. Companies choose to undertake their clinical studies in Australia because they have access to diverse and skilled professionals, including some of the world's best researchers, health professionals, and top graduates from high-quality universities. They've also got access to world-class research companies and facilities. And in particular, we have a strong clinical trial capability with our clinical research organisations recognised by the Good Laboratory Practice Guidelines. We've also got efficient ethics and regulatory framework, including a clinical trial notification scheme that enables rapid entry, which only takes 5 to 7 weeks to first in-human and other clinical studies. We also have a nationally regulated standards that are internationally recognised by both the Food and Drug Administration, so the FDA, and the European Medicines Agency, so the EMA. Therefore, clinical trials conducted in Australia will not require separate application approvals to the FDA or the EMA. We have a diverse participant recruitment pool in terms of age and ethnicities, with a population of nearly 25 million. And lastly, an additional benefit is the ability for trials that are dependent on seasonal factors that may start off in the Northern Hemisphere to continue to Australia as we are located in the Southern Hemisphere. Jack, are there any other attributes that you can think of that makes Australia an attractive destination for biotech companies?
Yeah, Rita, there's the ease of doing business in a politically stable, English-speaking nation, which I think is a real benefit. And importantly, from 1 July 2022, a company's income tax rate will be capped at 17% for commercialization of Australian-held intellectual property under a scheme known as the Patent Box. We'll have another separate webinar specifically on this topic. Well, that brings us to the end of this short session on the benefits of conducting R&D in Australia. Setting up and operating a business in Australia to access these benefits requires expertise to ensure the regulatory requirements are satisfied. Our next topic will therefore cover the tax and legal entity structuring considerations, such as where the IP should be held and how the business will be funded. With our series, we aim to assist you creating a successful venture in Australia.
Yeah, so if you have any questions or you'd like some specific advice or need some assistance for a company that is looking to undertake R&D in Australia, or if you have something specific you'd like covered in a future webinar as part of this inbound R&D series, feel free to get into contact with me or Jack. Our contacts are in the links provided. Thank you for watching and look out for part 2 coming soon.